You know, some people are incredible because of what they accomplish, but others because of what they overcame. And my guest today checks both boxes. He's an accomplished musician, self-taught. He's the director of communications for a worldwide church organization working in about 100 countries. And he's an author and more. And all of this, though he was forbidden to go to college by an alcoholic and abusive father. And he struggled through many years with severe depression. So you can bet he's got something worth hearing today. Hi, everyone. My name is Doug Newton. I'm the host of At the Intersection with Doug Newton, the place where scripture, culture, and character meet. And this is our new feature series called People Worth Admiring. Now, my weekly podcast, At the Intersection, is all about showing you how to develop your character to engage our culture with grace and fresh impact in your corner of the world. And I know no greater way to develop good character than the power of admiration. But who should you admire? That's the question. So in this special series, I present you with some great options, people whose stories will inspire you and shape your character because they are people worth admiring. Well, again, welcome. It's guest month here, August 2023, and I can't wait for you to meet Brett Heintzman. So, what do you say? Let's get right to it. Well, Brett, hey, it is really good to have you here. As I think I've mentioned before in a previous podcast, in these early days of the interview format that I'm using, I'm really drawing upon my friends, and so. It's not going to be any surprise to those that are watching or listening right now that this is another case. You are such a good friend, and our history goes back a little ways. And we've had a chance to work together as colleagues, as people who have a shared ministry, and so forth. But anyways, I'm so glad that you were willing to be one of the early ones on these interviews. So welcome.
Thank you, Doug. It's really an honor and a privilege to be here and to be included in this series of podcasts. It's just really an honor. Thank you. Good to be with you.
Well, let's help people get to know you just a little bit. I know a lot of the things that you're doing, but right now you are in a very significant role in a nationwide organization, the denomination of the Free Methodist Church in the United States. Tell people just a little bit about what you currently do, but then we'll backtrack a little bit and see what got you to that point.
Sure. Yeah, I serve as Director of Communications for the Free Methodist Church USA. Basically, it encompasses a wide number of different services that we provide to the church. If you look up any of our family of websites, our team of 9 gifted and talented individuals facilitates those websites. We also are in charge of Light and Life Publishing, so we are the publishing arm of the denomination. Our award-winning Light and Life magazine is part of our facility, which you know well, Doug. You actually were editor once upon a time of that magazine. And so our team deals with that. All of our graphic design. We also assist many ministries in the church with their graphic design needs. We also handle our social media platforms and a good number of things. So email campaigns, we handle all of those things on behalf of our Board of Bishops, on behalf of the church, and to promote the ministries and message of the Free Methodist Church. In addition to that, the second hat that I wear is Director of the National Prayer Ministry for the Free Methodist Church, which is a real gift to be able to serve in that capacity. The prayer ministry was started about 6-7 years ago with this idea of spiritual revitalization in the church, and to be able to pick up the mantle of those early days from you and Margie, and to be able to continue to run with that and to work with the National Prayer Ministry is just a tremendous blessing. And to see the church rise up in prayer is a passion of mine as well.
Yeah. Well, and of course, our history goes back largely along that particular track. But it wasn't long into me getting to know you that I could see, so much ability, so much
Mm.
communication skill, and so forth. So it doesn't surprise me that you landed where you did in your current role. But just for our viewers and listeners, that's not where you started. You didn't go to
Oh no.
journalism school, or you didn't get a computer degree or something like that, right?
No, not at all. In fact, I don't know how far you want to rewind, but the reality is I was raised in a pretty difficult home setting.
Hmm.
I was raised by a father who, your whole podcast series is about character and integrity and honesty and all of these wonderful virtues that you've identified. And to be honest with you, I wasn't raised in a home where those things were modeled.
Hmm.
And my father was an alcoholic and my mother didn't know what to do about it. And my parents actually, their entire motivation for how to discipline myself and my brother and my sister was a shame based approach.
Huh.
Like just shame you mercilessly for how bad you were in an attempt to discipline us.
Wow.
The problem is that never shaped our character, but it did shape us as individuals to realize that we were just damaged goods. And
Hmm.
so when you're raised in that kind of atmosphere and then you find yourself released from your home into, the public square, it was difficult for me. There's a lot of life lessons that I have learned the hard way from good people who were people of character who kind of took me under their wing and helped me see that there was a better way to live. And I was immediately planning to go to college outside of high school. That never happened for me. It's a very long story. My father basically forbid it. He was going to kick me out of the house if I went to school. Come to find out, I've learned that he dealt with such insecurities and didn't really see that when you're just the child and you're growing up in a
No.
home. You really don't see those things. But
Right.
then at some point you wake up and you realize what was going on, the dynamics in your own home as you were growing up. And it was a real difficult setting. I missed out on an opportunity that I could have had.
Hmm.
Um, but yet, so yeah, and I didn't go to journalism school. I didn't go to get a communications degree. I was just passionate about a number of things and relentlessly pursued honing those crafts and skills because they were important to me and I was passionate about them. And so
Like, for
there's been
example,
very
yeah,
little that has stopped me. Like, for example,
yeah. I mean, what were you passionate about? What were some of those things you pursued?
music.
Oh. Hmm.
I play the piano. I've never had a piano lesson in my life.
Hmm.
It was just
Wow.
something I took instrument lessons in band. So I learned how to play trumpet, learned how to read treble clef, taught myself the rest of it,
Wow.
and figured out music and figured out how to play the piano because I wanted to do it.
Hmm.
Computers was another area. I was fascinated with what they could do in their software and everything. And I basically am self taught in everything I ever learned about computers. Never went to college for it. Started with an IBM PCXT and worked my way up from there and have just been fascinated by what they were. So I pursued and continued to work in technology. Actually ended up owning a computer business at one point in my
Wow.
life where we custom built PCs and did small business networks and things like that in some of the earlier days when building PCs was really popular. So, yeah, I mean, those are a couple of things I was really passionate about and therefore pursued it, just went after it.
Well, before we go any farther, I'm going to do what I have found very fun for me, maybe a little embarrassing for the other guests that I've had, but I've decided I want to keep going in this direction. Um, I just want to let people know, uh, you know, other than just the interesting connection that we have through church life and leadership and so forth. Uh, I, I I see some traits in you that have to do with why I really see you as a person of character and why I admire you. Your courage. Most people, there's that old song, nobody knows the trouble I've seen. Well, anybody who's in a nationwide ministry, in church organization or whatever, there's a tremendous amount of courage that it takes to relate to people across a broad spectrum of concerns and desires and points of view and things they really think, strategic things that they think need to be the case. And boy, one of the hardest things in life for people in those kind of roles is, as leaders, is the courage to keep moving forward, to stay the course, to stick with a vision, and to help others stay focused as well. So your courage was one of those big reasons. Your You are industry is another one. I mean, that's an old-fashioned word, related, and I think most of us know it more in terms of being industrious. But you get more done in a short period of time, and then of course you compound it because you're working for many, many hours all the time. But you get more done. I mean, I have always been so amazed at how focused and how much you can crank out in terms of work. Process ideas, and anybody who does thinking work for any kind of a living knows that you sweat as much doing that kind of work as you do digging ditches or working in a farm field or something like that. So your industriousness, and then finally, I think your perseverance, and it's already come out in what you've said. But I have a definition that all of these traits I've created definitions for that are just what I call blue jean definitions, because they're not dictionary academic sounding. They're just kind of the definition that really sort of fits real life. And my definition for perseverance: pressing through hardships based on a firm belief in a worthy goal. And that is you, Brett. I have admired that so much, and so, anyways, that's why I really wanted to have our folks get a chance to meet you and so forth. Well, you've told us about a little bit about your background and the hardships. Actually, I knew a little bit about that, but actually, I didn't know some of the stuff about you being forbidden to go to college and seemingly having doors closed off. But you just, became kind of a self-taught person in so many ways. And you mentioned that you found other people to admire in your earlier days. Who were some of those people or some of those sources? Maybe it was, something that you were reading or watching or whatever.
Yeah, there were a lot of people in the first church experience I had, which I found the church in the summer after my seventh grade year in school. And I was blessed to find the little church in our little town that I did. It was full of people that I would just refer to as the saints. They really were. Betty Swanson was this lady who invested in me. She had such patience and such caring, and was a woman of integrity, a woman of prayer. And she would just have this way of pulling me aside. And she would invest in me in just quiet, humble, and yet powerful ways where she would speak a few words and I'd just get the point of what she was saying. There was another man.
Were these words of correction or
Sometimes they
advice?
were. Yeah. Like I remember one Sunday I sang and she said, you know what? She said, this was during the days of special music. We don't have special music in church as much anymore.
Yeah.
But I sang a special song in church one Sunday, and she came up to me afterwards and she said, Brett, there are some days when you get up and sing and I think, well, Brett sang a really nice song. And then there are some days when you get up and sing and I think, Lord, you used Brett to sing a really nice song. She goes, do you know what I mean? And I said, I think so. And she said, well, today was one of those days that I thought the Lord used you to sing a really nice song. And what she was trying to encourage me to do was not be so full of myself, to step outside of myself and realize that I could be used in the hands of the Lord to do ministry, and that he wanted to use me. And there was a difference between surrendering into what he wanted me to do and just being a little more full of myself. So that's one instance.
Mm.
There was another man, Temple Gerald, who is still around. I just love and respect him. He took me under his wing. I'll never forget we never locked the doors of our old church in town,
Mm.
ever. They were
Yeah.
always open. And I was just down there one night, just trying to get away from home. And he came into the church, and I'm sure he had places to go and things to do and people in his family to see. And yet he invited me to go with him and even put the keys to his brand new van in my hand. I was driving at the time, and let me drive his brand new van. And we went out to dinner, and he just shared some time with me. And he would do things like that and just invest in me.
Mm.
He would shake his head at me sometimes when I was off track, and he would agree with me or encourage me when I was. And I totally valued his insight, his encouragement, his godly wisdom.
Mm.
He was gracious, uh, and yet prodded me when needed. And so people like that, those are two primary examples. But there were more.
Yeah. Yeah.
Plenty of people of integrity that just came into my life, and without them, I don't know where I'd be today.
Well, and you're talking about him. One of the things I try to reinforce in whatever venue I might be talking about character is to help people understand that generosity is not just something you do with your money. It's something that you do with your time. It's something that you do with your attitude toward others. You have a generous spirit toward them. That sounds like what he was sort of
Yeah.
modeling in your life.
Yeah. And life was difficult. The thing that you realize is when you've been raised in a home like I was raised in, and you go through some of the experiences I went through, where it begins to manifest in trouble is in relationships.
Hmm.
You discover that you bring the only thing you know how to bring, and that's who you are, how you've been shaped, how you've been molded, and you bring it into relationships. And when all of a sudden you meet up with people who have extremely good character, were raised in solid homes, they're healthy relationship dynamics, all of a sudden it's like thunder and lightning. There's just this clash that comes together. And I began to discover those clashes. And I also ended up discovering a couple things about myself that were challenges along the way, like one of them being, depression and anxiety. I remember early on in my time at church, one of the pastors in our church actually encouraged us to take these personality surveys. And part of what came up was temperament and different issues. And one of the things that came up for me was anxiety, so much so that he wanted to send me for counsel. And I really didn't know what to do with that. I wasn't even sure I understood what anxiety was at the time. He just noticed, and it was reflected in the results, that I was wound up tight as could be. And the depression that also went along with that, in many ways, came because of some of the other dynamics that had been invested in me the whole time I grew up. So how I think that my words for people would be, though, that those things don't have to be the end of you, nor do they have to be the primary plot in your story. Because those things still exist in my story, but they are not the primary plot of my story. They are not the main theme of what I bring to the table. They're things that I have to take care of. They're things I have to be self-aware of. Self-awareness is a huge part of integrity and living a life of character. And so I think that I'm much more self-aware of those things now. But no, there's way more to my story than those things. And so I would encourage people.
Yeah, so because depression is kind of a catch-all that gets filled with different, different assumptions that people make about what it means, what it feels like, and everything. Let's talk a little bit more specifically about. Because obviously, what we're doing here is I'm going to be wanting to hear from you how character relates to a person who struggles with depression.
Sure.
I've been concerned for years that even talking about character and some of the work that you do to have good character could even be discouraging to a person who maybe struggles with self-esteem or whatever. So when you're talking about depression, how did it manifest itself in your life maybe a while back, and then now how does it still you know appear in your life as you've learned how to manage to cope and maybe have some victory over it? That's what I'm kind of fishing for here.
Sure.
Yeah.
No, I can tell you that the shame-based discipline really left me feeling like there's just something inherently wrong with me, and that became the foundation for
Hmm.
the depression.
Oh,
So
good.
a lot of the depression that I dealt with came from this idea of, well, I'm just damaged goods. I'm never really going to, matter much to anyone or anything. Um, and really, where that leaves you in is a pretty dark place. And I can just be completely honest. There have been times where suicidal thoughts crossed through my mind.
Hmm.
Driving down the road, I can remember there were times even in my adult life thinking 90 miles an hour into that tree would be better than going on another day.
Hmm.
Uh, and that darkness captivated me for so long. Um, to the point where conversations with doctors, medication, and I don't think there are some people out there too, because you and I both share a Christian faith, that think that medication for depression and just spiritual counsel for depression are opposed to one another. I think they
Hmm.
can actually join hand in hand
Mm-hmm.
and be used together. And
Right.
that's been something I have found in my own life. So I want to make sure and encourage people out there that if you are taking medication for depression and you experience those dark times and you wonder if you're worth it to go on another day, number one, you are. Number two, keep taking your medication. And number three, get spiritual counsel.
Yeah.
They all go hand in hand and work together. But I think the big breakthrough for me came when I finally sought healing from all of the wounds that had been inflicted on me by my parents. And that came through the scriptures. I found myself in Romans chapter 8 and basically paraphrased the vast majority of that chapter in the first person, as if God was speaking directly to me and not just in general to a general audience.
Hmm.
And I began declaring those scriptures over my life, and the power of the word began to whittle away at all of the hurt and the pain. And the key moment in all of that declaring of those scriptures over my life and those paraphrases was when the Lord gave me a vision of being in the room as a same age adult with my parents.
Hmm.
And he revealed to me deep in my heart, deep in my understanding, that they had endured the very same things that I endured at their hand.
Hmm.
And in that moment, anger and resentment and disdain were replaced with compassion.
Hmm.
Like, oh my goodness, my father's father did the same thing to him that he did to me.
Hmm.
My mother's parents did the same thing to her that she did to me. And I now here's how I explain how healing works. Imagine you're standing in a walk-in freezer, and it's 40 below zero in there. You can feel it. It's you can
Yeah.
tell if I'm in here long, I'm doomed. You can touch a shelf and your skin's going to stick to the shelf. You can feel the cold, but imagine now taking a snapshot of that and having it in the photo album of your life. You can look at it, you can remember that it was cold, but you can touch it all day long and it's not going to affect you. It's not going to harm you anymore. It's not going to
Hmm.
overcome you. There's a difference between being in the experiential space and having this flat picture in the photo album of your life.
Hmm.
And all of that experiential space became a flat photograph in the
Hmm.
album of my
Wow.
life. I remember it. I know it's there. I can look at it now and I can see it for what it was, but I actually have compassion for my parents, you need to understand that this healing took place after they both passed away.
Hmm.
So people might be thinking, can I experience healing and move on from traumatic events in my life if the people are not there to apologize or to make amends? And the answer is absolutely yes, because God is your healer. People aren't your healer. And so that has been my experience. Manifest in darkness, shame based, all the way, totally had control of my depression and anxiety. And with the healing from that has become great results in managing and overcoming depression and anxiety in my daily life. Man, a huge deal.
So, boy, I've got several questions. Let me try to focus here. So now you're dealing with this flat picture much more than the experiential one. Does the
Exactly.
experiential one come in like fog for like a moment, and you have to battle in some way, or is it, does it stay a flat picture and it is more of a kind of a more of just a choice in the moment kind of a situation to just look at something else, look at a different picture or whatever?
So there is, boy, what a great description you had of that, about this fog that can creep in. Yes, it can. I would say that it's a shadow, not a fog,
Oh,
because
yeah.
shadows too are they're they're a sign that something is there between you and the light. But still, a shadow is just a shadow. It's
Hmm.
the shadow isn't going to do anything to you, right?
Yeah.
And here's when they happen. There's a big word that a lot of people toss around today in psychological circles, and it's triggers.
Hmm.
There are still times where, even in my marriage or in other relationships, people will say things and it will trigger something in my
Hmm.
life, and a shadow appears and it looms kind of large. But I
Hmm.
remember in that moment, though, that this has been done,
Yeah.
and I don't let whatever it is get any closer.
Hmm.
Are there times where it affects my thoughts temporarily, or my wife and I have to have a few words of explanation, or, posture things and figure things out? Sure, we do. But all in all, it's amazing how the healing has actually, it's been healed. It's like,
Yeah.
a broken bone, you might get a twinge or something, or a memory of breaking that bone, but the bone's healed
Yeah.
and it's strong again.
Well, and I mean, it's got to be. I mean, I believe what you're saying, but your life really is testifies to that, because the kind of role that you are in is one that it would seem to me that you could easily feel incapacitated by the
Sure.
pressure, by the expectations, by the challenges, the intellectual challenges, the emotional challenges, and so forth, and you don't live incapacitated
No.
anymore. I mean, I didn't know you before, but you definitely don't have that kind of being incapacitated with, oh, who am I? I can't do this. I mean, we all have the imposter syndrome every once in a while, uh,
Right. Sure.
you know. But you definitely don't get incapacitated. But I got to ask you another question now, because I have hopes, and I think it should be the case. The vision that I have for the work that I've been doing is I want to be at the interface between people of faith who are wanting to be good people, better people, and people without a Christian faith, but
Hmm.
who want to be better people. Okay, so I don't think this is going to throw you for a loop because you think so well on your feet. But you talk about healing and about going to Romans. Is there something that you could say to a person to at least move in the direction of finding that healing that you're talking about? And we would attribute it to something that God does for us, right?
Right. Right.
But maybe they don't have the allegiance to Scripture in the way that
Right.
you process Scripture. I heard as you were talking certain things that were still part of your choice and kind of your mental framework and kind of a mindset that you had to adopt. That it seems to me, from our faith perspective, it worked because also not just something God did unilaterally for you, but you were cooperating with something about how he created us. And to me, that's sort of the interface for
Yes.
people who don't choose not to, at least at this point, to have a faith commitment, a Christian faith commitment, but they can still be benefiting from these ways in which we believe God has designed human beings to function. What would you say? That long question, sorry. I just
No, it's
broke the
okay.
biggest rule of interviewing. Stop talking and let the other person talk. You know? But I had to process it in my own mind here. What is it? What would you say to a person that could still bring them hope from a character and relating to depression or those kind of things, who don't have that faith commitment, but that would still be beneficial?
Sure. Choose the virtues over all else.
Mm.
There's a number of reasons why I say this. So, one of the things, Doug, that you pointed out about me that you admire, and it's one of the ones that I also chose to talk about, is courage.
Mm-hmm.
So, courage is not having this superhuman chutzpah
Right,
to stand in the gap.
right.
Courage is actually, it focuses on something higher so intently that the option for pain or discomfort in the moment actually takes a backseat to the higher ideal.
Yeah, right, right.
And when you do the courageous thing, and I've known people in my life right now that do the courageous thing, to great personal pain and detriment, but they held on. And here's what I've learned about when you cling to the virtues: people with those same virtues cling to you.
Hmm.
And what that will bring you is the greatest gift to get through some of the things you struggle with. Like when you become a person of integrity, you're the kind of person that does what you say you're going to do, when you say you're going to do it, how you said you were going to do it. If there's a stumble along the way, you're quick to apologize, quick to make amends, quick to fix it. And I mean, you're a person of integrity. Others with integrity cling to you. And when you are suffering from things like depression and anxiety, you don't need to be surrounded by the misery loves company kind of principle. You need to be surrounded by people who will help you stay centered. And who are those people going to be? They're going to be people of humility. They're going to be people of courage. They're going to be people of integrity, of honesty, of industry, of vigor. They're
Yeah,
going to be people who cling to all of those values, and they will stay by you.
yeah,
You know, when you have relational troubles, if you can cling to the ability to keep a confidence, people who have the ability to keep a confidence will cling to you. And that is where strength joins strength and will get you through.
hmm.
That is what I would say is one of the things that if you don't have a faith based approach to life, if you've not made that commitment to things like the scriptures and whatever, cling to the virtues,
Yeah,
because those virtues will attract to you people who cling to them as well, and the two of you will cling together. And that company of people, it is the strongest bond, and it,
hmm.
it compounds. It's not addition, it's multiplication.
Hmm.
When people with virtues cling together and bond together and relate to one another, because then you will find that you can be vulnerable in the space with people with character and not get abused or taken advantage of. Your details of your life won't get shared. And when you're that kind of person and they're that kind of person, all of a sudden you have a safe place to unload, to share, and life just becomes a beautiful, beautiful thing. So I
Well,
would say cling to the virtues, because
yeah,
people with them will cling to you.
I love that. And of course, you're speaking my language here, my heart language. Yeah, I mean, even what this whole these interviews are about, and I especially name people worth admiring, is because what you're saying really is the case. Our own health in every dimension really does depend on finding people who are worth admiring and then having
Amen.
them around you in some way, whether geographically they can actually be right with us. We have this network of relationships in our life with people. And so I've never heard it put that well, though, especially in relation to dealing with depression. I hope folks who are listening and watching this right now, if you know anybody, you yourself may not be struggling with depression, but if you know someone, you've got some wisdom here that Brett's given that's worth maybe rewinding and just listen to that last section that he just talked about. It was wonderful, so important. Those were healing words. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Yeah, you're welcome.
Well, the way that I like to, what time are we at? Well, okay, got a little bit more time. The way that I like to draw this conversation toward a point is, to look for some words, and maybe we can move beyond the depression thing now. And because you are a person in real significant leadership role and responsibilities that encompasses more than just the U.S. You have relationships all around the world.
Yeah.
You work with a team of people that are both at you work with volunteers, you work with people who are remote. You're not necessarily all gathered together in the same place. There's all sorts of challenges involved there. What have you learned to either think, say, or inspire in people that helps them to manage their life, to do their work well, to move in the direction of better character? You're not a person who just goes around giving everybody advice like you're the expert on everything, but what would you say to maybe some young person just starting out, someone who comes to work for you, somebody who's just starting out in a life as a follower of Jesus Christ or something? What character advice would you give?
I wish I could see that list of 12 character traits again. Is there any chance you can bring that back up?
Yeah, there they are.
I would encourage them to begin with honesty and integrity. There's no replacement for those two, and there's no sense in putting on a false self. To be who you say you are, to live honestly, to live with integrity is a beautiful thing for anyone because it frames everything else you do. And the one thing I actually remember going to a worship leading conference in integrity music put on years and years and years ago, and they said, don't hire talent, hire character. And I've never forgotten that. So I try in our team to hire character first and realize that the talent usually comes. What happens when you hire character first is not only can talent be honed, but like for instance, we have 2 designers on our team, and because they are people of immense character, there's no competition between them. It's amazing. Sometimes you get creatives in a pool together, and there can be lots of competition versus ideas, or someone is hurt that their idea didn't get used over someone else. I would say, don't worry about when someone else gets elevated because of your voice and your way, or you take a step back and elevate someone else. You're not going to be set aside because you are a person that elevates others. That's the big lie of our competition-based workplace today, is that if you elevate someone else, you'll get set aside. The truth is actually the opposite of that. If you're a person who elevates the good in others and helps them to shine, you will also be elevated in due time and in due course.
I love every one of these interviews so far have gone in a little bit of a surprising direction, but thank you for what you've just said. My definition in these 12 traits for humility is exalting others above yourself. And
Mm,
this is such an important thing because we often, if I were to put my hands like this, we often think of humility as being this function. We put ourselves down lower.
yeah,
But
no.
you can arrive at exactly the same position by lifting others up.
Yes.
An act of humility really is making sure others get the credit, get the respect, get the gratitude, get the attention that they need. And when you're doing that, you're actually humbling yourself without even putting yourself down at all. And that's what you just said. So, you know, thank you for
Yes.
for seeing things
It
eye to eye. I,
Yeah, it really is true. If I'm just honest, part of what went on in our home was part of my father's whole modus operandi was to put others down so that he could elevate himself, and it never worked out to his advantage ever.
yeah,
And so to see that for what it was and to realize that no, I can actually elevate others and it's no detriment to my position. It doesn't harm or put me down or set me aside. It only elevates what I do because I've taken the opportunity to push someone further up the ladder and give them the attaboy when they really deserve it. And boy, do the people on our team deserve it.
yeah,
Their giftedness is just stellar. Their character and the way that they minister to other people, their interactions with our Free Methodist family are just outstanding. And so I elevate them every opportunity I get.
and you do.
And
I hear it all the time. Yep,
yeah, because they deserve it. And
yeah,
it's not just flattery.
no,
It's well deserved.
right, right.
Yeah.
Well, hey, this has been great. The last two that I've done, and now this is the third, I've always prayed for the person. I know you well enough to know that, well, first of all, my wife and I, Margie and I, pray for you regularly. I'd love to have you be the one that prays for folks who are listening today.
I'd love that.
Yeah, and just take it in the direction that you feel in your heart that you want to pray a blessing for them.
Sure. Father God, I just thank you so much for this conversation today. I thank you for the ability to be real about our struggles and to know that you hold us in the palm of your hand. Father, I would reach out on behalf of all who may be watching today who struggle similarly with depression or anxiety, who are trapped in codependent relationships that aren't healthy. And I would ask that you would give them the strength, Lord, the courage, the humility, the industry, the understanding, the integrity to walk uprightly, to grasp a hold of all of the beautiful things you've given us that are life-giving. And
Yes.
Father, that in that they would find safe places with other people who are like-minded in integrity, that they can share and be vulnerable and find healing and wholeness, that they can find grace and mercy at your hand and in the comfort of others, that they would find a brotherhood and sisterhood of like-minded people who are the quiet ones who move about this earth, who don't do so blowing trumpets about themselves, but do so elevating others.
Yeah.
Father, I ask your blessing upon Doug and Margie in this Fresh Impact School and the ministry that you've given them, and I pray that it will go far and wide and impact people in the ways that you have given him the vision for impact. Father, thank you for this conversation. We
Yes.
just thank you for your great love, and we praise you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thanks, Brett. I really appreciate that. Uh, you are blessed. We continue to pray blessings over you and Barb and your life. So thanks for taking
Thank
your
you.
time today, and folks, if you've really valued this particular conversation today, I would love to have you leave a comment in the section and just let Brett know how much you appreciate it, and maybe even just share a quick word about why it maybe meant something to you. So we'll catch you later. Thanks, Brett.
Thank you.
Um, wow, I mean, wasn't that great to meet Brett? and great takeaways. I hope you're encouraged. I mean, so much wisdom from a person who has accomplished much despite major hurdles in his life. So if you appreciated this interview, why not subscribe to this channel? It's going to tell YouTube that there are people out there who are interested in this kind of podcast. And while you're at it, drop a comment below just to say thanks to Brett for giving his time to us. Well, I hope you'll tune in next week to meet another fascinating guest. I can't wait. But until then, why don't you just keep looking around for people worth admiring?